Happy Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 245. Coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios, both North and South Jersey. Undisclosed locations under some winter weather. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. And now, outside of American Whiskey, 51 Edison Place, across the street from Prudential Center, we got the 55-inch screen TV Jumbotron showing us, Nick, our mugs, our faces, live to those that are walking on Edison Place randomly, watching our podcast. I'm sure it's cold out there.
It's not too bad right now.
Yeah.
It's a little windy still after those storms. I hope everybody got out safe after those storms last night. Hit New Jersey pretty hard.
Lots of basements flooded. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Lots of basements
I can imagine.
flooded. But here at the bunker, thank goodness, the fortress, we have safeguards in place. And thank goodness we're fortunate so far that the bunker is, it's supposed to survive a nuclear attack. So, only be, cockroaches, taxes, and the Let's Go Devils podcast. Yeah.
So we have one of those. I mean, my house is over 100 years old, so we have one of those, like, it's almost like concrete, but it's like this weird foundation that's like they don't really use anymore because it's expensive and it's like hard to kind of like set. But once you set it, you set and forget it. So it's not as porous as like some of the foundations that they make today. So, we don't tend to get water, thank goodness. And it's funny because I get water from other things. I've gotten water from the chimney. I've gotten water because one of the sinks busted. So there has been water. I got one of the guys who worked on our heater forgot to put the piece back on and leaked all over the basement. So I've had water in my basement, just never from the traditional water in your basement means. So knock on wood, by the way, because we don't need any more. I don't need the traditional basement means ways, but it's we're doing okay over here in the bunker. You're doing okay in the bunker. I hope everybody else's bunker. I hope nothing of value got ruined for anybody. Let's just say that.
Yeah, it just sucks, when that happens and there's a leak. And there, because some people like me, you like things the way they are. You're kind of a neat freak a little bit. Actually, I'm not a neat freak. But, you keep things clean, sanitary, and then all of a sudden, that water comes in, ruins your day, and the smell, But
yeah, the musty smell is pretty bad.
Kind of reminds me of untimely injuries.
Yeah. Like, it's awful.
Segue?
It's just as awful as seeing the second power play. Do you see this? Do you see the second power play that they put in practice today?
No, I did not.
Okay, this is this was the second power play. It was, hold on, I gotta find it. Amanda Stein put it out. Sorry, there's a lot going on in here. It was Holla, Holtz. I lost it. Sorry. It was Holla, Holtz, Colin Miller, Chris Tierney, and I'm forgetting the fifth guy, but he wasn't that good. It was Bastion. It was bad. It was awful. Now, I will remind everybody they were doing penalty kill drills at the same time. So like players like McLeod, and I'm assuming Mercer, were probably not available because they were focusing more on the penalty kill drills. But yeah, seeing that and just seeing how terrible that was stark.
Yeah, but you know what? If they don't give any shorthanded chances going the other way, I'll take it.
I know, right? You just don't want to be negative on the power play. That's kind of the...
Yeah. If you just stay even and you get a couple jabs in there, good things will happen. No, it doesn't sound like a sexy power play, by the way.
No, it's bad, so
But I
but
kind of like it though. I'm one of those people that kind of like. Actually, I think that power play would actually work. But you're gonna have
work at
to.
what?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of power on that power play. Yeah, you got Nathan Bastian up front. You got Holla that's very versatile. Alexander Holtz is on there. You said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's got a shot.
My only
Colin
worry is
Miller.
who's controlling the puck there, and what is Chris Tierney doing there? Like, what possible value does he have to that?
He wins the battles in the corners. I have no idea.
Yeah, and this just kind of goes back to our name tonight is Scars and Stripes, and there's good reason for this. So the Scars are because the team is injured to all heck, and the Stripes is because we've got Will Scouch coming on to talk about Team USA winning the World Juniors last week. Seamus Casey, a gold medal champion. So we're going to talk about him with Devils prospects, but let's talk about the Scars. So right now, the Devils are missing Dougie Hamilton, obviously. Like, he's not coming back probably for the rest of the season. We're missing Jack Hughes, Timo Meyer, Andre Palat, Jonas Siegenthaler, Thomas Nosek. We're still missing Nolan Foote. We forget how big a part we expected Nolan Foote to be in this team. He's don't know where he went. He's not there. Am I missing anybody?
That's about it for now. Siegenthaler?
Yeah, I had Siegenthaler, who has a broken foot, so he's out for who knows how long. Yeah, so the Devils made a bunch of call-ups. Cal Foot's back on the team. Max Willman's back on the team. Shane Bowers getting another NHL shot. They're all probably some of them are gonna have to come into the lineup, Sam, because they're in a bad way right now when it comes to injuries. Now, this team's always been deep, right? That was the expectation, but I just need 7 players that are out. No team can lose 7 players, especially when one's your top 2 defensemen. I don't consider. I'm sorry, your top line defense. You lost both of them. You lost your top player, Jack Hughes. You lost probably like your 4th best player in Timo Meyer. You lost a very important depth piece in Palat. You've missed Holla for parts of the season. You've missed Nico Hischier for parts of the season. You've missed. There's one other major injury that I'm kind of spacing on, but and then you had Nico Dawes, who was missing for part of the season, and I would assume that the Devils would have been much quicker to bring him up with the struggles of Schmid and Vanacek. So, you're sitting here and you're looking at the lineup, and it's made worse, Sam, by the fact that this team plays the most back-to-backs in the league, and they just weren't ready for that. Like, they just aren't. And I know that you're gonna come back at me on this, but they aren't being coached well enough in the second half of the back-to-backs. Like, there's just I don't think Lindy Ross is even doing that bad of a job in the grand scope. I think Ryan McGill could do better with the defense. I think there's some scheme issues with the personnel here, but I really don't think Lindy Ruff has a ton to do with that. Besides, just because a lot of the issues have to do with positioning in the defensive zone, and Lindy Ruff's scheme kind of ends when it comes to defensemen at the breakouts and the break-ins. But when it comes to just preparation for that second half of a back-to-back, to go, I think they're 1-8-1 on the second half of a back-to-back, and just getting murked, like just completely destroyed every single time on the second half back-to-back, like looking terrible, like. The Devils made that big comeback against Vancouver on, was that Sunday? Was it Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
So they make the big comeback against Vancouver, and Vancouver's coming in, beat the Islanders, beat the Rangers, so like it doesn't look so bad, but the Devils just looked destroyed on Saturday. I get it. Injuries. I get it. You just lost Jack Hughes, and then I think you lost Siegenthaler in that game. I get it. I truly, truly get it. But I don't understand how this team is just getting put in the dirt, even without Hughes. This team is much more than Jack Hughes. This team was supposed to be 4 lines deep coming into the season. You lose Jack Hughes, and you look like a completely different team every single time.
So you're saying that they should be sellers?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, you're making
Where
it
did you
sound
get
like
that from?
Well, it sounds so depressing. I'd rather sell now.
No, I mean, they're in a playoff spot, aren't they?
Yeah, they're within it. I mean, look, they're not that far off from last year's pace at this time. But they're going to have to get it together and try to win with what they have. I mean, the fact of the matter is, against Vancouver, even though that they were down, they were able to mount a comeback, even with the players that they have. And guess what? They could have pulled it off. Just, I'm not blaming the ref that they lost the game, but that was a bad no call. And, I all I have to say is it's not too bad. They just need to get in the playoffs. Get in the playoffs and get healthy.
And right now, Sam, they're actually the 3rd seed in the Metropolitan Division according to points percentage. The Flyers have 2 more points than the Devils and have played 2 more games. I don't know if that includes tonight. I don't think so. If the Flyers lose tonight, I think they were tied last time I checked. If the Flyers lose tonight, then they're 3 games out of the Devils. The Devils only have to make up those 2 points. The Devils are 2 games behind the Islanders and only 2 points behind. So both of those teams, they have to win one of the next 2 games, and they're tied with them for 3rd in the Metropolitan Division. They're also tied with the Washington Capitals, but they have so many more regulation wins. They have 4 more regulation wins than the Islanders. And 5 more regulation and overtime wins than the Islanders. The Islanders are banking a lot of points on overtime losses and shootout wins. So, the Devils have an advantage here. There's a couple of things that are to the Devils' advantage. And I laid this out in an article a couple weeks ago. But what's really going for the Devils is 2 things. One, they've already scheduled a lot of their out-of-conference games. And they did not take advantage of them, which is a problem. They did not beat the Sharks. They didn't beat the Ducks. They didn't beat, there's another team that they definitely should have beaten that they didn't beat. They did not beat those bottom-feeding teams. Edmonton, I guess you don't say that now because Edmonton has come back and is now back in the playoff race, but, you could have beaten an Edmonton team that was down and out pretty much. So that's a bunch of points there. Same, if the Devils just beat the Sharks and the Ducks, they would be 1 point behind Carolina with 2 games in hand. This Metropolitan Division just didn't come to play this year. The Rangers did. Good. I got to give all the props to the Rangers. But even them have come, the Rangers only 10 points ahead of the Devils. Devils had a devastatingly bad season with a million injuries. And the Rangers have played out of their minds. It's only given them 10 points. And 10 points is a lot. I don't want to downplay it. But it's not an insurmountable lead at the halfway point of the season, right? You could see the Devils making up 10 points to the Rangers. The Rangers just come down a little bit, and the Devils go up a lot. So, I get it. Injuries, goaltending is terrible. It's still terrible. I like Dawes, but he's just, for some reason, they don't play well in front of him sometimes. And he just got, what they did to him in Vancouver, he played really well and allowed 5 goals. And that tells you something, right? He was facing big shot after big shot after big shot after big shot. The fact that game was 0-0 after 1 was outright insane. Or was it 1-0? I can't remember. It doesn't. Either way, it doesn't matter. The fact that that's where they were after 1 period is outrightly insane. Here's where I'm optimistic. And I kind of want to talk about the trade proposal article I did before we have Will on. He's coming on in 10 minutes. So I want to kind of bring up this proposal that I had. But I'm optimistic because 2 reasons. One is they have a ton of Metropolitan games coming up for the rest of the season. They have so many games to make up against the Rangers, against the Flyers, against the Islanders, against the Blue Jackets, against the Hurricanes. They haven't played the Hurricanes yet, right?
No, I don't think so.
So these head-to-head matchups, they're going to get chances to overcome these teams. And if they just win those matchups, then they're going to make the playoffs. Period. End of story. 2, I think a trade is coming. I don't think that Tom Fitzgerald is going to stay on the sidelines. He's been sitting on the sidelines and kind of waiting, and the reason for that is because the goalie market's outrightly insane. But I think he's going to make a trade. I think it's going to be one of those franchise changers, right? I don't think he's going to make – I think it's going to be Timo Meier-esque, where it's just gigantic. I don't think the price is going to be Timo Meier-esque. That price, now looking back at it, was quite high just because, you risked 2 first-round picks on top of all the other pieces that you gave up. He basically, to save Holtz, he overpaid in picks and B prospects. But I think that he's going to do that again. And with just only giving up 1 first round pick, but or maybe like a couple seconds, he's going to replace that somehow, because if you don't remember, this year's first round pick has conditions on it. So if the Devils make the Eastern Conference Finals, they have to give that pick to the Sharks. So even if they trade that pick this year, they're probably going to have to risk their 2025 pick to do it. Anyway, so I don't know if you saw this, Sam. I know you've got all this stuff going on at your at the day job and the podcast. So I'm going to tell you about this trade that I proposed. The Devils and the Calgary Flames. The Devils would be getting Noah Hannafin and Jacob Markstrom. So fixing the defensive problem and the goaltending problem at once. They would be giving the Flames Lenny Haminaho, the second-round pick that played amazingly at World Juniors just a couple weeks ago, Akira Schmid, Nathan Bastian, and a third and a second-round pick. And when the third-round pick is in this year, the second-round pick is in 2025. Part of that deal is, I have it as the Ducks, but you can put any team in here. You can put the Blue Jackets, the Coyotes, whoever. They would retain $2 million on Markstrom's salary. So that would make Markstrom and Hanifin come here at $8.95 million exactly. So basically, you only have to put Dougie Hamilton in LTIR, and you're going to stay under the cap. You can bring back Mike, you can bring back Hughes, you can bring back whoever else whenever they're ready. You don't have to worry about playing cap gymnastics the rest of the year. And you still have $1 million in cap space that you can kind of play around with. But that $2 million is retained. It's probably going to cost a second or a third round pick, somewhere in that range, because there's 3 years left on that deal. So it's probably going to cost a second. I said third, probably going to be a second. So you got to move that around a little bit. But what do you think of that, Sam? Noah Hannafin, Jacob Markstrom. What do you think of that price?
I think it's a good, legitimate trade proposal. I wouldn't do it. I'm not big on Markstrom at all.
He's leading the league in goals saved above expected.
But he hasn't played on the New Jersey Devils yet.
It's on the Flames. The Flames aren't good.
Yeah, I know, but he still hasn't played on the New Jersey Devils yet.
My big issue with Markstrom is just he's been bad on the penalty kill. He's been average at 5v5 or great on the penalty kill. I'm mixing it up. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to go back and look at the stat. I think I flipped it around, but I think he's doing average at 5v5 and just going above and beyond on the penalty kill, and that's skewing the number. I'd have to double check. I'm sorry. I just shouldn't have cut you off for that because I didn't have my ducks in a row.
To tell you the truth, we should have never let Scott Wedgwood go.
I said 2 years ago that is still to this day Tom Fitzgerald's worst move, was putting Scott Wedgwood on waivers. You brought him here for a reason. There was no reason to put him on waivers. There was none. There was no upside to doing it then. He was trying to sneak him through, and he made a mistake. And that was the year was it 7 goalies? That was the year of the 7 goalies.
Yeah,
that's John Gillies, Andrew Hammond. That was the year Nico Dawes, probably hurt his hip.
But what did we get out of it? A nice draft pick.
Well, no, that was no. You're thinking of the deal before that. So Scott Wedgwood got traded to Arizona before that. He re-signed with the Devils a couple years later, and then we lost him to waivers.
Yeah, that was 2021, right?
Yeah, we didn't get anything back. We lost him for free.
Oh, I know, but when your team sucks really bad, you do well in the draft.
Oh, okay. I understand.
Yeah, it's the same theory of getting Corey Schneider when, McDavid and Austin Matthews were in the next two drafts. It's like, really? It's like, really? He makes us a really a below mediocre team at that point. You want to really be bad so you can get that draft pick,
Let me ask you this. Before we have Will on, because this is a really interesting situation. Toronto signs William Nylander to an $11.5 million contract. I want to make the point that I really think that Jesper Bratt can be and is pretty much like a B tier Nylander. Like, he's just below what Nylander is. And you're getting him for under $8 million. Amazing contract there. I think Bratt has been so good this year. It's a little underrated just because of all the stuff going on, but Bratt has been great. That's the first point. The second point, who would you rather be? Would you, we love our Devils, but let's take that bias out of it. Right now, if I said the Devils could trade their entire team for the Toronto Maple Leafs team and bring that team here, would you do it?
No.
No, I feel like that you're putting all this money into this team. And it's very top heavy. And because of those stars, you get guys like Max Domi to come and sign for not that much, and Tyler Bertuzzi signs a 1-year deal, but they have no money to fix the goaltending. The reason why I think that the Devils could get Markstrom in this insane goalie market is because nobody else could really take on that contract, and Calgary does not want to retain. And of course, you can get like a team like Anaheim or Arizona or Columbus or whoever to retain. But, I think that taking on that salary, I think they'd rather do a 2-for-1 deal. Anyway, the other team that you would think would want Markstrom is the Leafs because, right, Brad Treliving is their old GM and, the old Flames GM, so he might want his guy. But they don't have any money to do that this year. I can't see them taking the chance to do it to add $6 million to their cap next year. When you're paying Nylander 11.5, you got to figure out how to pay Marner. John Tavares is still on the books next year. He's got one more year, I think, left on that deal, and Austin Matthews is getting a rate. Like, that team is in bad shape. It feels like.
Well, I mean, I rather have the New Jersey Devils just because they are well balanced both offensively and defensively. Just the issue with the Devils are a couple things. It would be nice to have a really a true number one, but they're not exactly a dime a dozen. And again, I'll go back to
a goalie or defenseman.
A goaltender, but also it goes back to what I was saying about Scott Wedgwood being let go. Well, he could have won a few more games. I mean, right now, how lucky are the Devils to have Luke Hughes and Simon Nemitz back-to-back drafts and have a pairing, a dynamic pairing, potentially for the next 15 years. Hopefully they're lifers in New Jersey. I mean, they show so much promise, and they're early on in their career. I mean, they're kind of holding the fort on the blue line. Now, I will say this, and I said this on the Sunday podcast, that, look, does Tom Fitzgerald really needs to strike a big deal now? No, because the defense and the goaltending has been so bad so far this season with the Devils. It really can't get any worse. It really can't get any worse statistically.
And you're in a playoff spot.
Yeah, and you're in a playoff spot. So, what you hope for is everybody gets healthy. And then, again, if you happen to have that nice, if you want to go on the Tampa Bay Vegas plan and kind of manipulate the cap situation, maybe you could do that for the playoffs if you're still within range. But I think Tom Fitzgerald doesn't have to make a move now. I think he can wait.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in theory. I think Sam, I think this team has all of the ability to be what the Panthers were last year. Sneak into the playoffs, go on a run, get a hot goalie, and whether that's somebody in-house, that's a Nico Dawes, Sam, you have to be my champion here. Because I told Chico, I said to Chico, Nico Dawes would be the Devils' starting goaltender in the playoffs this year. I said that. I'm going to scream from the mountaintops because...
Do you know which podcast that was? Because I got to get that recording just to. I
think it was the top 50 of all time, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Wasn't that one?
I'll have to pull that out. So
I'm giving myself a pat on the back because I definitely called this. I thought that I always liked Dawes better than Schmidt, and I was quote unquote proven wrong in the playoffs last year because I thought Dawes should be the guy who got the call up. And they called up Schmidt, and Schmidt won them the Rangers series. Say what you will, Schmidt won them the Rangers series. And, I don't know if Dawes was going to do that. That being said, we came into the season. I still liked Dawes as a prospect, or Dawes as a player, or Dawes' skill and technique and talent better than Schmidt. But again, I thought Schmidt was the guy. You had to put him on the roster. You had to go into the season with Vanacek and Schmidt. You couldn't. Dawes was hurt, obviously, with the hip injury, so I didn't know what he was going to look like coming back, and that was always the caveat. He needs to look just as good as he did before coming back. So that was kind of the point.
Well, our next guest is in the green room right now, the Andy Green Room. His name is Will Scouch, founder of Scouching. You can find him on Twitter at Scouching. Will, you're on with Sam and Nick.
Oh, good evening. I think I might have lost your audio, but I could be wrong. Anyway, am I coming? Oh, there we go. Sorry, my mistake. I'm doing well.
I think it was
How
a fader issue because I lost it for a second.
Yeah, I think there was something that faded in and out.
That's my fault. It's that automatic mix minus whatever.
Yes. I went to audio school for a little while. The problems are often just they never end. But anyway, thank you for having me on. It's great to join you. It's everything's going well. How are you all?
We're doing great. And this is, I feel like this is early for us to we usually have you around draft time. We couldn't have you last year because we didn't have a draft pick. So we had to find the right place to have Will Scouch come back. And I saw you were doing the live podcast or the live shows for the World Juniors. I was like, boom. Once this is over, Will's been just jumping all over it. I have to celebrate an American victory, of course. Because that was definitely huge for the U.S. hockey. Let's jump right into it. I want to ask you a lot about Devils prospects, but first I do want to talk to you about the World Juniors as a whole and this Team USA win. Do you think that this is going to start a trend? I think this is 2 and 3 years. Do you think that Team USA is going to kind of turn the tide of who's controlling junior hockey?
I don't think that's outlandish. I think Canada, has typically had that, I would say that sort of control or that title, I guess you could say. But things have been a lot murkier with Canada lately. And what USA Hockey has been able to do from, I would say the last 15 years has really been remarkable. And the style of play that these guys play and year after year, they just keep churning out guys that play that way. It's really impressive, and a lot of these guys are going to the NHL and doing a really good job, entrenching themselves and becoming premier players. So I mean, I thought that team was going to be sort of one for the ages this year in the World Juniors, and for the most part, in my view, they were. It was a little rocky in spots, but it's never a super smooth ride through that tournament. But yeah, I mean, I thought they were a great team, wire to wire, filled with guys who I think will be in the NHL for a long time. And I always have a ton of fun watching, especially this age group of guys from the NTDP. Always a ton of fun to watch, and I hope it continues into the future, because it's good hockey and it's good for the game.
Absolutely, and obviously the one we were looking at as Devils fans is Seamus Casey, and
yep.
I'm not a prospect evaluator. I do the Devils top 25 prospects just because I'm very, very well versed in that, because I speak to you and I speak to a couple other prospect experts out there and try to get your guys' thoughts on them throughout the year. So I feel like I'm versed in that, but I'm not versed in like how they play against like say a Lane Hudson or some of the other big prospects. So from your evaluation aspect, what were your thoughts on how Seamus Casey played in this tournament?
I thought he played really well. I mean, he was, the same Seamus Casey I remember from a couple years ago. A guy who, in my view, isn't perfect, but a guy who is definitely creative and shifty and skilled, and really sort of loves to take those offensive chances, and has enough sort of tight space skill and skating work, which is really, really impressive, and something I think he definitely needs, and definitely allows him to play the way he needs to play. Him and Lane Hudson, were a great 1-2 punch on that team. Every time those guys were on the ice, especially Lane Hudson, but Seamus Casey as well. But every time those guys were on the ice, you kind of noticed them. Seamus Casey, even against teams like Sweden, it wasn't like he was picking Norway apart all night. It was just a lot of him just sort of stepping up from the blue line, shaking off defenders, getting chances on net. And I thought he played really, really well. I was impressed by him. I don't think he's like a completely different player than what I remember when he was a draft eligible kid, but that's not a bad thing. He was a really highly rated player for me. And he seems to sort of be taking good steps, and I hope that this just continues for him, because he's a certainly very, very talented guy. And again, tons and tons of fun to watch for sure.
So let me ask you this about Seamus Casey, because you were always high on him. I think you had him. Did you have him in the top 20? Yep. I think when you did the
top
draft,
15, I think. Yeah.
So when I look at Casey as a prospect, and I kind of look at where the Devils are with Nemeth and Hughes, and I'm going to get your analysis of Nemeth and Hughes in the NHL in a minute, but I want to kind of talk to this in terms of Casey. You got a big contract for Hamilton. You got a big contract for Marino. Do you think for the Devils, do you think that there's more value in him just waiting him out and letting him develop, or do you think there's more value in selling high on him after a big World Juniors? Like, where, because the Cutter Gauthier trade is top of mind for a lot of us, because he has a big World Juniors and he gets traded. And obviously there was scuttlebutt with that with the Flyers, but they traded him when they felt like their value was high. Do you think there is value in that for a team like the Devils?
I mean, if they want to make a big splash with something, or want to use him as a tool to accomplish something bigger that kind of helps them make a push. I heard before I came on, you were talking about how you feel like this team could be sort of like a Florida Panthers kind of run. You get into the playoffs and you never know what happens. And I to a certain degree, I agree with that with New Jersey. I think that if there is some deal to be made, you're right. I mean, you look up and down the New York defense group. If you're asking me, I'm not as devoted to the idea that you can't have too many players on your team like Seamus Casey or a Simon Nemeth or a Luke Hughes, but there is a certain level of truth to that. But I mean, I do look at some of the guys that are playing for the Devils on defense night in, night out these days, and I think there are roster spots there at some point that will be, something to keep an eye on. But it's hard to say, because you don't really know what people are offering you. I think a lot of teams might still have questions about Seamus Casey, just because he's not a hyper gifted skater in terms of carrying pucks and quarterbacking rushes and all of those things. He's very good at it, but it's the NHL, and it's just difficult to convince teams that a 5'10" defender, regardless of how productive they are, is going to be super, super valuable. But I'm not one of those people. So it all depends on other teams' valuation of him. And I do think that if, I think there's jobs for the Devils where you could probably see him as a piece that you'd be okay without. You might regret it when you see him on another team, but if it helps you go deeper into the playoffs, and you have a guy like Luke Hughes already on the team, and Simon Nemec continues to be the offensive guy that he's been, then it's a lot easier to suck it up and deal with it, right? And so I think the Devils are a team that's pretty close to taking some good steps, and if he's an expenditure on that to take that to the next step, then that's okay. But I probably wouldn't be running to the phone and trading him because his value is high. I generally wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. So I see where you're going with that, and I think there's other moves to be had, because I think Casey right now is their top prospect, and in past years their top prospects were untouchable guys like Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec, and even Alexander Holtz I don't think was truly touchable until maybe last year, but again, they didn't move him when they made the Timo Meier trade. So I want to talk about the other prospect that was big in the World Juniors, and that's I'm going to say his name wrong, but Lenny Heminaho.
Pretty good. You got there.
Yeah, I'll figure it out once he's an NHL player.
Yeah.
But he played very well for Finland, right? I don't know why that just escaped my brain, but it was Finland, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, it's been a long day and my baby's crying, and it's
all good. I get it. No, I get you.
But he played very well. He scored big goals. Even when, I know early in the tournament he wasn't scoring those big goals, but he had these crazy underlying numbers and was playing really well. And then it started to kind of snowball for him. He was starting to get points. He was starting to get goals. He was starting to get really impressive goals. So I loved the draft pick of Haminaho when they took him. I thought it was a great pick. I thought the value was there. They didn't have a first round pick, but this is a guy who can get to the NHL, and that's what you're kind of really looking for in the second round, especially late in the second round. What's your evaluation of him now? He looked like a first round talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think Finland. It's always fun watching that Finnish team play in that tournament because they always come together really well. And this year they had a really sort of big physical team that had some skill and had some finish to it. And I felt that Haminaho was a big part of that. I wasn't the biggest fan of Lenny Haminaho last year. I had him a little bit lower, but I mean, where he was drafted, sure, based on what I had seen last year. He's been a guy who's, I think, improved quite a bit year over year. Just a guy who has, I think, learned how to manage pucks a little bit better. He was a much better puck mover with his passing and the way he sees the ice in the tournament than what I remember seeing from last year. You see him scoring a bunch of goals, but I think he's sort of settling into a role that sort of helps him get in position to score more goals, where, he's not going to burn you up the ice. He's not going to, deke every defenseman out of their pants every single night. He's a guy who is going to get the puck to someone, get himself into a scoring position, physically wrestle his way around the offensive zone, figure out some space, get the scoring chances off, and hopefully a few go in. So, I mean, I thought he had a very good tournament. Again, he was part of a very, I would say, physically dominant Finnish team. And he's definitely come a ways. I think could be a solid NHL player if you pair him with the right players. Who can sort of move pucks for him and sort of help him out in that area while he can sort of bump and grind and find scoring position and make simple passing plays and all of that stuff, which I don't see why he can't do that. So, yeah, I mean, if you get a type of guy who can play on your sort of third line and sort of maybe muck it up in front of the net on the power play or whatever you want to call it, I could see that being a guy like Haminaho and getting him at the end of the second round if that's his role in the NHL. That's a great late second round pick. He was almost a third round pick at the end of the day. So Yeah, I mean, he's come a ways. He was impressive. I thought he played really well, and he was part of a really, really, really talented sort of functional, cohesive unit for that Finnish team for sure.
So if the Devils have a chance, you would rather trade, just from what I'm hearing, you would rather trade Haminaho than Casey, right?
It depends on what you're getting, right? Like if it's Haminaho to help you get someone who will be a difference maker because other teams really value him now, then I might give it a shot. But and I feel like teams might not value a guy like Seamus Casey as much as maybe some people in the public might, and I think they would value Lenny Haminaho a little bit maybe more than some of the people in the public might. But I mean, who knows? It's so hard to know unless you're on the phone with these general managers. But if it to me, it's like a similar situation to when the Timo Meier trade went down and everybody was talking about how it can't be Luke Hughes. You can't trade Luke Hughes for a guy like Timo Meier, even though in the realm of possibility, you could make an argument that that might be part of the deal, but it didn't happen. It was Shakir Mukhamadullin, who I have not been a huge fan of, but NHL people seem to really like him. And it got you Timo Meier. So if there's a deal to be made where Haminaho is part of a package that gets you a major assistance for your team that will be there a while, I probably would really think about it. But again, are you going to regret it down the road? I don't know. I feel like Haminaho will be a solid NHL guy who sort of grinds it out real well, scores, mucks it up, and can make sort of simple plays. Like that's kind of going to probably be his bread and butter. So it all just depends, but I guess I kind of would lean a little bit more in the angle of if there's a deal to be made, he could probably be part of that.
So, we only have a couple more minutes with you, and I want to give you time to kind of promote everything you're doing with Scouching. So I want to jump into the NHL. We've teased it.
Yeah.
I just want to know, what's your evaluation so far of what Luke Hughes and Simone Nemec have done, just jumping into the NHL, making an immediate impact, playing as well as they have. Is this something you expected, like when you saw these two talents, that they could just kind of jump right in there? Or like what's your evaluation from them back then when they got drafted and what they've been able to do this season?
They've both been pretty much what I saw when they were draft eligible. They both have been guys with their ups and downs. In my view, in both of their cases, the ups outweigh the downs. Especially with Luke Hughes, he's a guy who I think has just looked excellent on the Devils, especially when he's got the puck and playing in the offensive zone. When he's on the power play with his brother, it's really, really, really fun, and you can see the skill, you can see the offense, you can see all of it. With Simon Nemec, I mean, he's also an exceptional player in general at what he does well, like puck carrying, getting up the ice, generating in the offensive zone. Both of these guys, I would say, are maybe not the best defenders in the world, but that's not necessarily what their job is. And at the end of the day, like, that's not really what you're drafting a guy like Luke Hughes to do. But they're not like terrible, but it's definitely something where you have to keep it in mind. And I think both of them has shown that they're capable of playing an offensive role in the NHL. And Nemec, I thought, was when I watched him in the AHL at the beginning of the year, I thought he was great down there, really settled in real quick and played real well down there, and earned a job. I think he earned that call up and certainly looks pretty good with New Jersey whenever I tune in and see them. So I think they've both settled in, and they're still about the same players that I remember them from when they were draft eligible. I see why Simon Nemec was a top 2 guy. I see why Luke Hughes was so highly coveted. They may have their warts, but I mean, again, the theme of this interview seems to be fun to watch, and those two guys are definitely part of that world.
Yeah, and as crazy as it's been this season, this team is at least fun to watch. You see that Vancouver game where they're down, I think, 3 goals a couple times. They still come back. They can roar back. They have the skill, even in, without Jack Hughes, even without Timo Meier. This team has a ton of skill and speed, and that could change a game on its head. That's why the Devils lead the league in comeback wins this season. There's a lot to like about this team so far this season, and you just gotta ride through this weird stretch that they're having and appreciate what's gonna come. But Will Scouch, host of Scouching, I want to kind of give you a couple minutes. Just tell everybody where they can find your work. What do you got coming up? What have you already done that they could check out now? Let everybody know what you got going on.
Of course. So you can follow me on x.com or whatever at Scouching. We're also available. We also have a TikTok page now, so you can follow over there. Same username. Making little shorts nowadays, trying to be all 2020s, you know. Scouching.ca has been rebooted and redesigned, so you can subscribe over there, get some access to data tools and insights for NHL and prospect stuff for the draft and drafted guys and all kinds of fun stuff. If you want to see bar charts where Luke Hughes is really high on all the bars across the table, that's where you can find him and share it with all your friends. I also run a consulting business, Fractal Hockey Consulting, at fractalhockey.com, where if you're an NCAA recruiter or a Europe, we do all my hand track data work, kind of lives there now. So all of that stuff is accessible if you're NCAA or Europe or even an NHL team. There's lots of stuff in there, and we're able to tailor stuff to whatever they need to do. And I also am writing for Puck Preps now, which is sort of more of the NCAA world for me, covering the 2006 birth years there. So a lot of stuff on the go, a lot of balls in the air to juggle, but you can also catch me live streaming Monday nights 8 p.m. and Thursday afternoons 2 p.m. And it's always a rip-roaring good old time, so hope to see you there.
Listen, I've been in some of those YouTube chats, and our YouTube chat can get crazy sometimes, but it's fast and furious. It's a lot of fun. Everybody's talking to each other, and you try to interact with the YouTube chats too. And sometimes it's going so fast that I can't even keep track. I'm like, oh, why do I keep getting buried?
Once in a while,
I'm making such great comments, Will. But no, it's a lot of fun. Those YouTube chats, especially around draft time. If you're a big draft nut, like we try to be, the ones around draft time. Yeah. You know, and you always get them involved where you'll let people kind of, do mock drafts. Those are some of my favorite ones where you let the people, you let the users do the mock drafts. That's always because you always get the guy.
We'll be doing that again.
I mean, you got it because you always get the guy who comes in and gets like the 17th overall and he picks him 8th. But that happens. That happens in real life. Right?
Oh yeah,
real GMs do
crazier
that.
things have happened. Yeah.
So
that's all happening. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun. Sorry about that. Yeah.
And for the scouts out there, you definitely should talk to Will because he's one of the great prospect minds, underrated prospect mind. There's so many out there, but I always gravitate towards Will and his opinions. So if he's offering you consulting, take it because he's hit more often than he's not. So definitely check out Will and all of his work. Oh, great updates for you, Will. But I appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us, giving us updates, giving us positivity about the Devils because that's what we need right now. It's been too negative.
Yeah, hang in there.
So, Will, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much, and we'll definitely have you on again.
I'm honored. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Will. That is Will Scouch of Scouching. Find him on Twitter or X at Scouching.
Yeah, it's Twitter. I'm never going to this X thing.
I get complaints, Nick. It goes.
Let them complain.
This is like Taylor ham and pork roll.
Okay, and we still fight about that. But no, it's Twitter. The bird is alive.
The bird is alive. Bird is a word. Okay, that's fine with me.
But yeah, I mean, listen, everything Will said was a positive. That's rare for us right now to have a guy come on or to have a hockey analyst come on and only have mostly positive things to say. But Haminaho, great tournament. Seamus Casey, great tournament. Simone Nemitz and Luke Hughes having great seasons. These are the few things going really well for the Devils franchise right now.
So why trade them? Why trade them?
I don't want to trade Casey. I think he has too much value. And the only thing that worries me, Sam, is I've been hurt before, right? I've been hurt by Will Butcher. I've been hurt by Ty Smith. You see it happen before and you want to avoid it happening again. But people who I trust keep telling me that this guy is different. And we forget the Ty Smith thing will never make sense to me. Ever. Because in that COVID season, he was great. He was the top rookie defenseman in Calder voting. No other rookie defenseman had more Calder votes than him. And he forgot how to play hockey. Like, just straight up forgot. Like, coming out of the draft, he was a great skater. He started to focus on other things, and he kind of lost that skating ability a little bit. I don't know if that was a practice thing, a development thing. I don't know if Spokane was asking him to do too much in terms of scoring, and he was focusing on his shot and his passing ability and his zone exits. So his skating progressively got worse. He lost confidence, so he wasn't shooting the puck at all. So the strides he made with that didn't matter. And he was hesitant on passes, so he's making mistakes. I've never seen, Sam, I've been doing this for Pucks and Pitchforks, I think I said 7 years. I've been covering hockey for more than 10. I have never in my life seen a prospect like Ty Smith go from playing so well in the NHL with this promising career and then just nothing. Overnight. You know, Will Butcher was one thing. Will Butcher had flaws, and then they asked him to be a defensive defenseman. It was the most insane thing. Like, that was a development disaster, and that was on John Hines. I mean, I know a lot of people like John Hines. The thing he did to Will Butcher was criminal. So I get that. Like, that at least makes sense about what you did to that kid, and he just never got it back. You try to teach him, you taught him bad habits, basically. Ty Smith, he wasn't being put in a position to fail. He was being put in the same position where he was succeeding, and he was failing now. And then the next year, he was unplayable. You went from, he was kind of your top defenseman in that rookie year, to unplayable in 2 years, a 21-year-old kid. And he's best friends, you know, or roommates or whatever he was, with Jack Hughes, your star player. You know, there's this bond he has that should build confidence, right? You can make mistakes and come back from it, which is usually where the hockey players don't lose their confidence. When they are allowed to make mistakes, they usually play better, ironically. So I think it's because we've been hurt before that we look at this Seamus Casey kid with tentativeness, where I want to say he's going to be a great NHL player. And the Devils hit the ball out of the park again, and they're going to go forth with Hughes, Nemitz, Ball, and Casey, and they're going to be the top 4 for the next 10 years. I want to say that.
I don't think
But
Ball's
I have my
there.
hesitations.
I don't think Ball's going to be there.
What? Really?
He's got to do a lot more before he stays on this team.
You know, I think they've asked him to do a lot. I think it's a little early for them to be asking him to do as much as they have. He should have been the sixth defenseman this year, and he's the 4th, and now he's the 3rd. I guess, right? It's Marino, Ball, or Marino, Hughes, and then Ball, and then Nemitz, or maybe it's Nemitz then Ball. Maybe he's the 4th still, but you know, he's with the mistakes that Siegenthaler and Marino are making. Ball's had to have been the number 1 penalty killing defenseman, and he's not. That's not where he is. And here's, I see it more of him. Maybe it's because he's bigger, and I know we need to wrap up, but I've talked about the philosophy of the defense. I don't know if I talked about it on here. I know I talked about it on Twitter. I know I've written about it. The philosophy of the defense is angles and pokes. There's no playing the body unless you're in the defensive zone already. When it comes to rush attempts, angles and pokes, and that's gotten the Devils in trouble this entire time. I see Kevin Ball, all 6'8" of him, stretching his entire body trying to get a poke check. When you're that big, you need a longer stick, which means you're going to trip more people. And he's been in the penalty box a lot this year. And 2, you have a tougher time getting back into position on a poke check when you're that big, because you have to get lower to the ground to poke the puck, actually. So you have the advantage that you more often are successful with the poke check because you have the long reach. But when you miss, it's worse. It now takes you longer to get back into position and to stride up to get back to players with speed. I think they just need to coach him differently. And this goes back to what I said earlier about coaching. The way they're coaching defense doesn't make a lick of sense to me this year. They're always out of position. And that's either on the rush chances or in their own zone. They're doing this defensive philosophy where they're going for pokes, I said that. And then they're going for double teams. Right? So when a guy goes into the boards, and teams know this, Sam. Teams have the tape now and are exploiting the Devils on this. When the defenseman goes up against somebody on the boards, right? Say they're on the left side of the ice. They go up against the boards. The right side defenseman is now responsible for that left side in the Devils system. That is not how it should be, because you leave the right side completely open because the right side forward is still covering the guy at the blue line. So you have this giant space in the middle right there by that right dot when they're on the left side. And there's almost always a guy wide open. And how many people is at their office in this division? Panarin, Ovechkin. Oh, I could go on and on and on. Gensel is another guy who would just kill you there. I don't understand why the Devils don't see this situation and don't fix it. I understand it's really hard to change a philosophy in the middle of the season. But when it's working this terribly, how do you not change it? Am I crazy? Do you see the same thing?
I see the game a little bit differently.
Explain it to me, because I'm okay with being wrong if I'm kind of going off
I don't
base.
think you're entirely wrong. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, and I'm not saying that to be polite. I just think I'm as confused as you are on the positioning. What the players are looking at in terms of the double teaming that you're referring to. If you're going to double team, you better get that puck. Yeah, you have to get that puck.
They never get the puck.
They never. And the reason why they never get the puck is they never put the body on in the double team. It's always the poke check. It's the poking, the stick checking. It's very skillful, but an effective double team, if you were to take that gamble, you got to have at least one player take the body and the other take the puck. Oftentimes it's just two defensemen just poking at it.
They're like sweeping the ice.
Yeah, it's almost like curling out there, and it's just it doesn't make sense. I think oftentimes as well on defense they're out of position, and the pairing partner is overcompensating, which makes both defensemen are out of position. So it's and I don't know why this hasn't been fixed yet. I mean, it's not to say this is not a difficult game, but it's if you stay disciplined and you play your position, it's kind of like in Top Gun. Don't leave your wingman. Don't leave your wingman, and it's like just dumb it down and just do it. And then stay in position and let the play come to you. And I just see oftentimes you just see the centerman and the 2D guys behind the net triple team, right? And everybody's wide open. You see that a lot.
I mean, I don't. Again, either we have to change how we approach the boards, where one guy takes the body and the other guy sweeps, or both guys take the body and just try to kick it. Like there's got to be like something like it. Just
I've been on record to dumbing it down and just playing old kids game of just lane hockey. Just don't go on that other side for now.
Yeah,
till you figure it out.
Yeah, put that imaginary wall in between.
It's kind of like the Brady Bunch when they were arguing and they put a red line, because I guess Greg had one half of the room and Peter and Bobby had the other half. It's like just stay in your lane for now.
And you're not wrong, and that can get exploited, but not like this, right? Because there's always it's almost like a cover two defense, right? There's a reason why the NFL still does the cover two so often, because it works. Because it's everybody making up for everybody. There are exploits to it, but it takes a while to get used to, and it takes a while to adjust to. So I think if the Devils change to that, and it's so simple to retrain yourself to think that way. That's not because it has set limits, right? And set limits are easy to follow. So I don't hate that idea.
Yeah, I just wish on defense, or just generally speaking about the Devils, I wish they'd take the body more.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
they do it,
definitely.
when they're forechecking, they're throwing their weight around, and it's like, why can't you do it on the other end of the ice defending? Like, why is it just so passive? But when the Devils are doing an aggressive forecheck and they have two forecheckers going down to get the puck, that looks fine.
Yeah.
It's like, but where's that in the defensive zone? They don't take the body. It's just weird.
It is weird. Weird's a good word for it, because it's just bizarre. Just the defensive strategy is bizarre. And I'm curious now, with no Siegenthaler and no Hamilton for a considerable amount of time. The worry is that now there's no room for her. Brendan Smith is an everyday defenseman. And, okay, that's fine. And it's fine because Simone Nemeth is playing so well. But you're kind of out of players, right? We were curious.
We could sure use Riley Walsh right now.
I don't think he was going to sign. I think it was just going to, you forget his contract was up.
Yeah.
I don't think he was coming back. So I think they did him a solid by not dragging it out and hurting his reputation. And we saw what happened to Cutter Gautier's reputation with that. And we forget, Riley Walsh was really, everybody and their mother thought he was going to pull a Alex Kerfoot and spurn the Devils. And then the pandemic happened, and Harvard canceled the season, and he had nowhere else to go. And, he signed here. And the other thing is he played the right side. And the Devils, don't need a right-hander right now. They really need a left-hander.
Which is odd because it's usually the other way around for most teams.
Yeah, but the Devils have always prioritized the right side. You forget that they went and got Subban when they already had Severson, and I forget who else played there, but they were pretty stacked on the right side, even though Subban kind of played down to his level. But then they got Hamilton, and they had then they got Marino. So they've always had three really good right-handers. And this season, they have Marino, they have Hamilton. If he comes back in the playoffs, it'll be huge. They have Nemeth, and they have Colin Miller, who's played fine. He's been pretty good. Not anything like out of the park. Yeah, he's scored a couple goals. He was huge in that Canucks game. But the left side, you're looking at Kevin Ball, Luke Hughes, and Brendan Smith. And I like Brendan Smith as a forward. I don't like him as a defenseman. It just is what it is. I like him as a forward. I think he brings a lot of what you're talking about, of what this team needs as a forward. As a defenseman, he has too much responsibility and has to focus on those responsibilities, which is not his strong point. So I hope they get a left-hander. I'm surprised Cal Foote was the call-up because, A, he's right-handed, and I brought this up. I thought Santeri Hataka was going to get a look because he looked pretty good in the preseason, but from what I understand, he's dealt with some small injuries, and he doesn't look that good in Utica. Haven't watched enough Utica to make a conscious argument either way on that. So they called up Cal Foot. So if an injury happens on the left side or the right side, he's the guy coming into the lineup. And he has NHL experience. I believe he's a former first-round pick. So, he's skilled. Maybe he was an early second. I can't remember. He's either late first or early second. He's a good player for what he is. But we'll see. We'll see what he can do. He's been in the AHL this season. I did kind of want Hataka to get to the look. But defense has just been weird. Villano, who looked really good in the preseason, got demoted to the ECHL. He got brought back this week because he's dominating the ECHL. But it's these guys that you thought were going to provide depth at defense. They're just having rough seasons all around. So defense is hard. But that's all I got, Sam.
All right, let's plug.
So I brought up the trade. There's two other trades. I did one trade where it's just Markstrom and one trade where it's just Hanifin. That's on Pucks and Pitchforks right now. Check out those three trades. We got a new guy, Nick. I'm gonna say his name right. Natal. Really excited about this kid. Really good writer already. He's got experience, but he's come to pucksandpitchforks.com. Wrote about 3 under the radar defensive trade targets. I wrote about Trevor Zegras. This was before the injury, but with the Cutter Gauthier trade, and them having a bevy of centers there, what would it look like to bring Trevor Zegras here? I think it would be interesting. It's definitely not a priority, but you got to jump on value when there's value. The other Sam, talked about the Devils pursuing Jacob Chychrun, and ever since he wrote that, the Chychrun train has been rolling, and everybody's been writing about it. I'm not saying we started the trend, but I saw it nowhere before Sam wrote about it. So good on Sam. John Bailey wrote a story about 5 potential Siegenthaler replacements that's doing really well. So I think the 20,000 people who have read that so far, everybody kind of check that out. If you haven't seen that, you're missing out. Marcy Rubin talked about what the Devils are looking like without Siegenthaler and this ridiculous schedule that's coming up for the Devils. I wrote an update on Jack Hughes' injury earlier. Jersey Joe talked about Lyubushkin and Noah Hanifin and bringing one of them in to provide stability. And then I wrote a power ranking of the Devils' goalie targets that Elliot Friedman spoke about last week. So check all that out. Pucksandpitchforks.com. And we'll have more stories coming out soon. I'm going to react to the story from Elliot Friedman saying that teams are asking about Simone Nemitz. So I'll have a story on that out soon.
Also, we'll have some news about the outdoor game, the tailgate. But for now, go to joinourcrew.com. Sign up for emails, the latest of where we're going to be for our live events and all that jazz. Anyway, joinourcrew.com. Go to pucksandpitchforks.com as well. Till next time, let's go Devils.